Section 17 of The Green Forest Fairy Book. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joseph Tennis. The Green Forest Fairy Book by Loretta Ellen Brady. Kings and Queens and Peasant Folk. Chapter 8. Once upon a time, in a splendid palace on the top of a high hill, there dwelled a very old king and his wife, who was likewise a very old queen. Now this royal old couple lived in great state and luxury. Their diamond crowns glittered and sparkled like the sunbeams on a summer sea, and their trailing velvet robes were so thickly embroidered with gold that they stood alone. This very old king and his wife, the very old queen, had a coach of gold and glass drawn by 8 white horses in silver harness. But with all this splendor and magnificence, this royal old couple were not happy or contented. Indeed, they were called Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch, which names were most suitable, for they were discontented and disagreeable as the day was long. Queen Grumpy fretted because she had 100 ladies in waiting. She said they bothered her. King Crosspatch scolded and sulked because Lord High Chancellor would not permit him to smoke a briarwood pipe. They both declared their diamond crowns gave them a headache, and they were tired of their trailing velvet robes. Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch refused to ride in their royal coach of gold and glass. The 8 white horses trotted too swiftly and shook their old bones about. So this very old king and this very old queen went afoot. But even so they complained and scolded because all the roads about the palace led either up a hill or down, and they puffed and panted for breath before their walk was done. Now often and often at sunset, as they rested on their way up the high hill, Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch looked with longing on a certain snug little cottage down in the valley. Within this snug little cottage lived a very old man and his very old wife. They were peasants. There were rows and rows of sunflowers and hollyhocks before this snug little cottage and behind, while to the left and right stretched green pastures, thick with blackberry vines. "Ah, my dear," King Crosspatch would sigh as he watched the old man at work. "How pleasant it must be to live in such a snug little cottage. That old man goes every evening to fetch the cows. How I wish I were that old man." "Indeed, yes," Queen Grumpy would reply with an answering sigh. "How I wish I were that old woman. She goes about from morning until night so brisk and blithe. She can bake bread and churn butter herself. She is not bothered with 100 ladies in waiting as I am." Now most remarkable to tell, often as Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch gazed thus longingly at the little cottage so snug, and wished themselves the old man and the old woman, the old man and the old woman gazed just as longingly on the splendid palace, and wished themselves King Crosspatch and Queen Grumpy. For if you will believe me, this old man and his old wife were a most discontented couple too. So it happened one evening when Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch were walking down the hill, they met the old man and his old wife climbing up. So while they sat to rest on a stone stile, these 4 discontented old folk fell to talking. "Ah!" exclaimed King Crosspatch to the old man. "I have often watched you fetch the cows home from pasture in the evening, and what fun it seems, to be sure. Then you often go a-berrying too. You should be very happy." "Indeed, your Royal Highness, I am not," replied the old man with bitter feeling. "I am tired of fetching cows, and I would like to sit still all day with folded hands. I often wish I were you. As for going a-berrying, I go only because I am so fond of blackberry pie. There's one for my supper tonight," he added, and smacked his lips with relish. And then, oh, how King Crosspatch envied the old man. King Crosspatch had longed to eat blackberry pie all his life, but the court physician would not permit such ordinary food on the royal table. So the poor old king had never had even a taste of a blackberry pie. "And you too," said Queen Grumpy to the old woman. "You should be very happy. You loop your dress above your red flannel petticoat, and trot round all day baking bread and churning butter. You have nothing ever to vex or worry you." "Nothing to vex or worry me," repeated the old woman in astonishment. "Why, I am vexed that I must churn my butter, and at this very minute I am worried lest the loaves I left baking in the oven may burn before I am home again. And indeed, your Royal Highness, I loop my dress above my red flannel petticoat only because I must. 100 times a day I wish I were you and could wear trailing velvet robes sewn thick with gold." Now, as these 4 discontented old folk talked on, a curious plan popped into their heads. They decided to change places. Accordingly, Queen Grumpy took the old woman's dress and looped it above the red flannel petticoat. The old woman buttoned herself into Queen Grumpy's trailing velvet robes. King Crosspatch put on the old man's battered hat. The old man set the sparkling diamond crown above his sunburned brow, and all was done. Then, singing and laughing, these 4 old folk went on their separate ways. All 4 felt assured that they were really walking on the road to happiness at last, and all were very pleased and jolly in consequence. "Oh, there's no place like a palace, a palace, a palace. Oh, there's no place like a palace upon a hill so high," sang the old man and his old wife as they climbed up the steep hill. "Oh, there's no place like a cottage, a cottage, a cottage. Oh, there's no place like a cottage down in a valley green," sang King Crosspatch and Queen Grumpy, and they went trudging down. Then when they reached the snug little cottage, how pleased they were, to be sure. Everything was so cozy and comfortable to behold. The kettle on the hearth was boiling, and the loaves in the oven were browning. The bird in the cage was singing, and the cat on the cushion was purring. The table was laid with all manner of good things for tea. "The blackberry pie, my dear, let's have it at once," cried King Crosspatch, and went searching through cupboard and larder to find it. "Wait just a moment until I have made the tea," answered Queen Grumpy, busily bustling about the kitchen. She made the tea, and he found the blackberry pie, and then they both sat down to supper. There were ever and ever so many good things on the table. There were cold roast fowls and quince preserves. There were strawberry tarts and plum as well. There was fresh new butter, and there was thick sweet cream. Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch ate them all, and then began to think about dessert. "Now, would you mind, my dear, if I should eat all the blackberry pie myself?" asked King Crosspatch of Queen Grumpy. "You see, I have only read about blackberry pie in books and have never tasted one in all my life before." "Not at all, my dear," replied Queen Grumpy most amiably. "I intend to eat all this ginger cake which I have never seen or tasted before." And so this royal old couple continued to eat until both larder and cupboard were bare. "How fine this little cottage is, and how very snug," said Queen Grumpy, seating herself in a rocker before the blazing logs. She began to knit on a gray wool sock she found. "I think we shall be very happy here." "And I think so too," agreed King Crosspatch. "We have eaten a fine supper in a very few minutes, and without any fuss of footmen or ladies in waiting either." He found a briar-wood pipe and began to doze peacefully in deep contentment. Queen Grumpy knitted busily until the logs burned low, when she began to nod and doze also. Then they both went to bed. But the beds in the snug little cottage were not of the excellent quality of its cold roasted fowls and new butter and jam. The mattresses were rough affairs. They were stuffed here with corn husks and there with straw, and yet again with goose feathers which pricked Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch like so many pins. On these rough husky beds the royal old couple tossed restlessly until morning. They vowed they did not sleep a wink. Perhaps they had eaten too much blackberry pie and ginger cake. What do you think about it? When it was daylight at last, King Crosspatch clapped his hands to call his servants to attend. "Ah, my dear," said Queen Grumpy, "have you forgotten that we are no longer royal folk but simple cottagers instead?" "Indeed, I had quite forgotten all about it," replied King Crosspatch. "Well, I am glad we are." And he began to dress. Together they set about making breakfast, but again the breakfast proved a different matter from supper. You will remember that they had eaten everything in the cupboard and larder the night before. There was no milk, for they had forgotten to milk the cow, and neither were there eggs. They had neglected to search the nests. Moreover, the wood box was empty, and the fire was out. "Now do you go out and chop some wood for the fire, my dear," said Queen Grumpy. "I shall milk the cow. I have always liked to look at pictures of milkmaids." She took the pail on her arm and went in search of the three-legged stool. Then she seated herself beside Bossy Cow and began to milk. But sad to tell, Bossy Cow, who herself was rather disagreeable, waited until the pail was nearly filled, and then she gave a sudden kick. Such a vicious kick it was, too. It upset the milk pail, three-legged stool, Queen Grumpy and all, and frightened the poor old queen half out of her wits. She began to scream so loudly that she quite frightened King Crosspatch, and the hatchet slipped and chopped a bit of his little finger. "Oh, oh, oh!" wailed King Crosspatch at the very top of his voice. "I think this hatchet is bewitched! Oh, oh, oh!" He wept, holding up his little finger. It was not much of a cut, just a little scratch, but he was a great Crosspatch, you know. "Oh, what shall I do? What shall I do?" he wailed. "With this terrible cut on my little finger, I can't do anything at all." There now," petted Queen Grumpy soothingly. "Don't chop any more wood. There are still a few drops of milk left in my pail, and we shall drink that and eat bread for our breakfast." She led her weeping husband within the snug little cottage, but when she looked in the oven she found another disappointment. Queen Grumpy had forgotten to take the loaves out of the oven the night before, and they were burned to a crisp. "Oh, this plagued cottage!" exclaimed Queen Grumpy, thoroughly vexed. "Everything goes wrong here. I wish I were back in my own palace once more. I would never sigh again to leave it." "Neither would I," agreed King Crosspatch, drying his tears suddenly. "Let's go back." They made up their minds in an instant, and slamming the door of the snug little cottage, they began to climb the steep hill to their splendid palace. Every step of the way they were in a perfect torment of fear lest the old man and the old woman would refuse to change places again. "That old woman will never want to give me my trailing velvet robes," said Queen Grumpy as they sat to rest on the stone stile. "And I have been thinking that the old man will fight to keep my diamond crown," said King Crosspatch anxiously. But at that very minute they heard voices, and behold, around the turn in the road came the old man and old woman, hurrying as though an army were after them. The old man was thumping his stick, and the old woman was making angry gestures with her hands, and both the old man and the old woman looked very cross and ill-humored. "Oh, here you are!" exclaimed the old man, stopping short before the stone stile. "Now give me my hat and take back your hateful crown without any further nonsense. I could not sleep a wink last night because it was so heavy on my head. Such a hateful palace, too. I never saw the like. I could not smoke my briarwood pipe which I brought along for company, and this morning 2 villains were like to drown me in a pool before I was fully awake." "They did not try to drown you," replied King Crosspatch haughtily. "That pool was a bath. Here is your hat. Give me my crown." "You may call it a bath or not, just as you choose," declared the old man warmly. "But let those 2 villains drown you instead of me, is what I say. I was never so disappointed in all my life as I was with your palace. The royal throne was hard as stone. The royal beds was soft as dough. Everything was wrong." Meanwhile, Queen Grumpy and the old woman were having a time of it. "Your cow has no manners," complained Queen Grumpy. "She kicked me and she spilled the milk. I should behead her if she were mine." "Would you indeed?" asked the old woman scornfully. "And drink water and eat bread without butter all the rest of your life, I suppose? Let me tell you, your Royal Highness, that your servants are lazy and good for nothing. I saw dust on the tops of all the doors and windows, and the silver flagon was not polished as brightly as my old pewter pots. Your royal cooks made griddle cakes heavy as lead. You had best behead them instead of my good bossy cow." Then she added, "Did you feed my bird and give him water?" "I could hardly feed myself in that awkward cottage of yours," retorted Queen Grumpy. "Oh, my poor bird!" exclaimed the old woman. "Here, hurry and give me back my own dress that I may loop it above my red flannel petticoat and be comfortable once more. I suppose you took the bread out of the oven in time, did you?" "I forgot it and it burned," sulkily replied Queen Grumpy, buttoning herself into her trailing velvet robes. "Oh, what stupid folk are kings and queens!" cried the old woman in a passion. "Come along, husband," she called, and down the hill they went. "And what stupid folk are cottagers!" called King Crosspatch after them. "Come along, wife," said he, and up the hill they went. And so these four old folk again went on their separate ways. All four were sure that they were walking on the road to happiness at last, and so all were very jolly and smiling in consequence. "Oh, there's no place like home, oh, there's no place like home," sang the old man and his old wife as they went trudging down to the little cottage so snug. "Oh, there's no place like home, oh, there's no place like home," sang Queen Grumpy and King Crosspatch as they went climbing to their splendid palace on the top of a high hill. And there we will bid them all adieu. End of section 17.